Are adults destined for disc herniation doing a heavy deadlift as we age, or have we chosen our own destiny? Every kid was once an adult. That kid probably was able to crawl, walk, jump, and fall without a single bruise and bounce off the ground without a second thought. That same kid is now 38 and has not done most of the things for years, and if they did, it might be called EMS. So are adults destined for injury as we age just because we are older, or is it something else? Did you know that about 70% of the U.S. population is living overweight or obese as defined by the CDC? A quarter of adults do not meet physical activities at all. In fact, they do no physical activity in their leisure time. And more than half of U.S. adults fail to meet recommended physical activity guidelines as recommended by the CDC. So these numbers posted by the CDC are the best picture we have of the general state of health and fitness in the U.S. So why is this a red flag for the U.S.? Can we reverse these numbers? And what is the best way to overcome physical activity droughts even as you age? So the main question we're trying to answer is, how can adults overcome these stats? Is it relevant to moving? And is physical activity enough or important for aging? Welcome to the Movement Multiverse. My name is Max and I will be the host for today's episode. The Movement Multiverse is a podcast for movement nerds, curious minds, and anyone who wants to think about movement beyond just the gym. Hosted by Max, each episode is intended to give you a new perspective on movement by exploring movement in all its forms, drawing from science, history, culture, fitness, media, and more. No episode is intended to treat any individual's medical problems, for education and entertainment purposes only. So let's really talk about what is going on inside of the U.S. More money is being spent on socialized healthcare in the U.S. for things like Medicare, Medicaid, for chronic conditions that could largely be avoided. And we're spending more money than basically any other country that has socialized healthcare. So these are, again, dollars spent on Medicare, Medicaid from the U.S. government, paid by taxpayer dollars for things like diabetes, chronic heart conditions, other chronic conditions that could very well be avoided from things like increasing physical activity, decreasing weight, moving more, and changing lifestyle habits like diet. So spending these dollars are spent on things that could be spent less on. This means that we're overwhelming the system. Our healthcare providers get burnt out faster. There are more patients and there are less providers. There's also less pay to providers. So the whole system is being overwhelmed with things that could be impacted by changes in lifestyle and physical activity and diet. To go forward, there really aren't any clear paths to control the system spending. And for these chronic conditions, age is often used as a reason for inactivity and frailty. The U.S. is also not as much prioritizing physical education programs, either by changing frequency per week, so decreasing the frequency, spending less education dollars on physical education, and sometimes even getting rid of physical education programs throughout a public school program. So if we're talking about how adults are not good at moving, we need to talk about how they are moving as kids. And physical education programs largely have a big impact on how we move as kids, but also can translate into how we move as adults. So during these physical education programs, we are forming identity as physical beings early on. We start to create the community with parents and kids in active activities. We hope to create more fun activities that promote various movement patterns and that really create strong kids and help kids find their active identity, whether it be for sport or just moving in general. And it also helps kids build self-efficacy to move on their own. It helps them be more confident, not only physically, but mentally, socially. And we can also talk about the lessening percentage of kids and adults being outside during the day, whether that be from technology, a certain climate, or just adults' activity influencing their kids' activity. Kids are more likely to be active when their parents are active. And then you have children, their activity influences their adult activity. So as someone grows up from being a kid to an adult, were they previously active? Did they play sports growing up? Were their parents active? Did they have a community where they were active in, such as in a sport? So there are many factors impacting why the U.S. is seeing these increasing numbers of less physical activity, larger numbers of overweight or obese adults. And do these numbers really play into being more healthy? Are these important? So can we reverse these numbers if they were? Let's say being overweight and obese either affects being physically inactive Or we could reverse it and say being physically inactive affects being obese or overweight. I would say these both play into each other, but there are many other factors that can change how chronic conditions affect our healthcare system and affect someone on a personal level. So is access to physical activity enough to change these numbers? No. So we can think of cities or suburbs where cars are dominant, sidewalks are rare, and access to outdoor physical activity, such as from like sidewalks, walking paths, parks, are not very frequent and are hard to access. If we did have access to those, would it increase the numbers or lifestyle change? I think somewhat, but not nearly to the extent we'd want it to. So what sort of incentives would work and probably would not work? So there have been thoughts that a program where step counters, where we can track the number of steps someone takes per day, doing more walking or running, would increase physical activity, either by like a monetary incentive or something like that. The problem is this is more of an external factor that could impact physical activity and adults moving more. Environmental modifications could be another way to incentivize more physical activity and for adults to move more, to help change those worsening stats of people moving less. So by changing the environment, we're talking about things like installing more parks, making access to sidewalks easier, making cities more adaptable for humans to move around without the need for a car, making more bike lanes. So environmental modifications would be where people can move easier on foot without the use of another device or technology. And that could definitely help maybe a little bit more than, say, a step counter incentive, because it requires more internal motivation, meaning you have to decide to go out to those things to do them. And it also would encourage you to go out and do those things, since, say, the grocery store would be a walk away rather than a 10-minute drive. And probably the most important incentive that would work is a more robust social support and community. So we mentioned physical education programs from earlier, or sport programs where kids and adults could both work together to be more active. So this is likely the best way to create long-term activity adherence for the general population. So these might be local groups you could find on Facebook, like a running group, or other local groups like sport groups. So like for adults, this would be recreational groups, maybe beer leagues, other things that would get adults more active in the community. So you have these social media communities. So say there isn't a local one, you could join a group of people who are doing the same activity that you are in different regions and share your journeys, just not physically being with each other. And then all of this increases that feeling of being a part of something. And when physical activity becomes hard, especially when the climate changes or there's less access to the environment, or maybe there just aren't good incentives to be more physically active, that feeling of being a part of something where activity is involved usually creates that long-term change. So let's go back to why childhood activity might increase adult activity. Those physical education programs and sport participation could influence identity formation. So being active becomes more of an identity. So someone says, I like to hike as a hobby, or I like to walk, I like to run. These are all things that become a part of someone's identity, usually younger as a kid. You also start to create more habits. Physical activity usually results from schedule formation and knowing when physical activity will occur throughout the day or the week. Then you also have enjoyment. Kids that are more physically active usually enjoy physical activity as an adult. And belief and values are a result of being physically active. To be routinely active requires motivation, it requires discipline, and those values often are carried into adulthood. So is the current gym culture, is the current physical activity fitness culture helping or hurting? It could be both, helping in ways of increasing access to physical activity awareness, helping more people become aware, at least knowledgeable, of changes that they could make. It might increase comfortability in the gym, so more people seeing the people in the gym could make them more comfortable. And then combining online culture with physical work, so people being more famous for fitness things or moving online could influence people to be more physical during the day, even so not getting rid of one or the other. So getting rid of online presence may be more hurtful than helpful for the general population. And it also helps create that idea, if they can do it, then I can do it. But gym culture might also be hurting in ways such as creating more comparison, where comparison might stop somebody from being more active. It might create ideal matching. So the idea of comparison, but saying, this is the ideal type. I will never be able to get there. And then only showing one or two ways to be active. So that might be, especially today, more resistance training in the gym, powerlifting, but really there are hundreds of different ways to be active. And someone might not be exposed to that idea. And sometimes fitness and physical activity ideas are often poorly communicated and instructions that do not fit your own journey. So that advice might be sometimes misleading or wrong, leading to confusion and just non-participation in fitness or activity. So we've talked about how the US is in a state where adults and kids are moving less, what factors might impact these different moving patterns. So now we'll discuss, if you are in this pattern, different ways you could overcome your challenges. So one is more on a systemic level through the environment. So this might include finding a place to live or be near that has access to outdoor or indoor physical activity. That might include equipment or clubs, communities, infrastructure. So looking for, are the people outside as I drive around? Does it seem like people are around other people? Are they alone? Is there other geography around me that might influence people to be more outside? Are there more cars than people? Are there more people than cars? Is the climate going to allow me to enjoy or be outside and be more physically active? So these are all things to consider for the environment that could affect your ability to overcome and help guide you toward your goals of being more physically active, especially when we are looking to decrease chronic conditions, especially as we age. And then there's also the internal factors that will impact becoming more physically active. And that includes things like motivation, discipline, your knowledge of moving, your goals. And these often will come with time, but the decision to change is best done when it is just done. So if you want to change, the best way to do something is just to start. Usually, I'd recommend people who are inactive totally to start with a really simple walking program, because walking is one of the best ways to be more active. It's usually easy to access, and most of the time people can enjoy it in different ways, either if it's with other people, their dogs, or just to allow them to enjoy the weather or relieve stress. And then third, probably most important, is the community. So how do you find the community that you want to be in? Is it more local? Is it someone that lives near you that you could join and do certain activities with? Is it a social media group where you don't actually have to be physically with them, but you could still do physical activity and share that journey? How do you choose? Is the activity they are doing or that you want to do something you enjoy? So find something you enjoy, look for ways to join other people, and then how to actually get there, just show up. You don't have to be perfect. You'll never be perfect in doing a certain movement, but by just going and showing up, it's better than most people do. And then to keep going, we have to consider all those other factors. Motivation will run out, so are you disciplined? Do you have that community in place? Did you find the right activity that you enjoy? And are you showing up? That's how you keep going. That's how you overcome these really hard challenges of physical inactivity and weight that are so often the main two goals for people looking to improve their health. So best evidence shows that age is only a number, and physical fitness can be achieved at any age for the vast majority of adults. And yes, it's probably true that since we are around, or as we are around for longer on the earth, the chance of being injured at least once rises. But it's probably more likely to be because you were not too active, but rather because you were too inactive. So in conclusion, to be more active is just to be more active. As we age, don't blame age for the reason you are inactive or why your joints hurt or why you're less strong. There are plenty of ways to become active. Look through your environment, make the changes in your community, and evaluate your own goals and your discipline to make the change you wish to seek.